Hi, I'm Dr. Chuck Betters. One of the more controversial questions we have facing us as a country today is whether or not Christians, or anyone for that matter, should be armed. Someone raises this question. They said, I feel like there is a story in the news almost every day about a shooting, and then there is all the commentary around gun control, the Second Amendment, and on it goes. I'm having a hard time reconciling my faith and I guess my patriotism. I am a proud American. I served in the U.S. Army to protect this country and the rights of our Constitution. I own several weapons and a law-abiding citizen and an occasional hunter. I'm also a proud Christian. I believe it is the bad people behind the gun that is evil, not the weapon itself. But all the commentary I have been hearing lately is really causing me concern. Should Christians be armed? I think it's important to note that in our country, the Second Amendment guarantees that everybody has the right to bear arms, but it is not necessarily right for everyone to bear those arms. I think the motivation behind bearing arms needs to be part and parcel to a whole theology of patriotism. You know, today I am finding more and more that patriotism is being defined by which party you are affiliated with. You're patriotic if you belong to one party or the other. Both seem to think that you cannot belong to the opposite party and still be patriotic. The difficult part for me as a spiritual leader is this. I think it's wrong for us to define our patriotism by our Christianity. Christianity is our God. That is what we serve and who we serve first. We are citizens of the kingdom of heaven before we are citizens of the United States of America. Our loyalty and our patriotism needs to be to that flag. That is to the Christian flag. Now, I don't mean by flag a literal flag. I am talking about the need for us to identify first and foremost as citizens of another world. We are citizens of the kingdom of heaven, and we are ambassadors to this country or wherever we might live. Patriotism cannot be defined by a political party. It cannot be defined by whether or not we carry a gun. It cannot be defined by who the President of the United States is. Patriotism has to be defined by whether or not what we believe as Americans is consistent with what the Scriptures teach. We are blessed to be in a nation where we can challenge the rightness or the wrongness of the policies of our country through the grid of Scripture. And that's where we must look first. We must look first through the grid of Scripture and ask ourselves whether or not what we are fighting for, what we believe in, who we are voting for is consistent with the Scriptures. Now, we will find more often than not that the candidates we vote for and who becomes our president or our representative do not live by biblical standards. Nowhere in Scripture are we told that that person has to abide by the principles of Scripture and live their lives through the grid of Scripture. We are told in Romans 13 that we are citizens of a higher kingdom, but those who are our leaders have been placed there by God for a purpose. And the purpose of government is twofold: to protect its citizens and to punish wrongdoers. That is where it should stop, but we know that it doesn't. That policies go into effect and things like racism and hatred and injustice and the penal system and all the other things that are very much a part of the politics of America enter into the fray, and Christians line up on both sides. We can talk about immigration policy. We can talk about abortion. We can talk about gay marriage and all those other issues that have become hotbeds of controversy. And what we have to do as Christians is filter all of that dirty language, all of that pseudo-patriotism through the grid of what do the Scriptures teach, and not compromise and not back down simply because it becomes politically feasible. The same is true of bearing an arm, carrying a gun. What is your purpose in carrying the gun? Why do you want to carry a weapon? You have the right to, but it's not necessarily for every individual the right thing to do. Does a Christian have a right to bear arms? Absolutely. Would he be sinning if he does? Not necessarily. But the question that we have to ask ourselves is, if we are going to carry the weapon, are we prepared to filter its use through the grid of Scripture? Would you be willing to kill someone? Would you be willing to shoot that weapon and take another human being's life? Under what circumstances would you be willing to do that? These are tough questions. These are questions that need to be addressed before you decide that you're going to get a weapon. So is it right? Possibly. Is it wrong? Possibly. And you have to ask those tough questions before you go and apply for a weapon. I hope this helps.